Live. I'd like to take your questions if I can at this time.
What is the current condition right
Your
now?
name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Rose with Fox 9. What is the current condition of your father right now?
He's 98 years old, Rose.
Can you, Jamie, you missed from CBS.
It,
Can you tell me a little bit about your dad, though? Can you talk about what kind of father he was?
Oh, my father was an incredible individual. He worked his entire life. One of the most amazing things that I found out about my father was totally accidental. Over at the University of Minnesota, there's a immigration history research archives. And my father and my mother, having lived a long and incredible life, packaged up all their memorabilia, their books, their everything, and there's 18 linear feet of records at the Immigration Research Archives at the U of M. While we were packing up those boxes, I just happened to look down in one of them, and in that little box was a little notebook, lined notebook. And I looked down at it, it looked something curious, a bunch of numbers, and my father has very, very neat script and very, very neat writing. And I looked down and I picked up this booklet, line by line, page by page, book by book. My father wrote down every donation to every organization, every penny and dime and dollar that he donated to the needs and causes of other people while he was the sole breadwinner for a family of 6 children, not including his wife. My father was the leader of his parish. He helped build that parish, the buildings, the rectory. He was the president for many years. He served on the board for many years. We used to joke that father would come home from work and then go to a church board meeting or a community meeting or a political meeting, always working, always striving, and his goal was a free, independent Ukraine. 75 years ago, he was willing to lay down his life for Ukraine. You can see that he passed on his heritage, pride of his country, love of his language and his religion to his children, and that is the legacy that he leaves behind.
What would you say, though, to people who play devil's advocate who say he did all these wonderful things because he did something terrible during World War II?
Proven. Prove something.
Can you talk a little bit about why you think Russia would hand over this information and how this all started?
I can't speak to Russia's motivations. I do not have Putin wiretapped. However, it's pretty clear. Associated Press themselves proudly, with no shame or any kind of questioning, released a week before President Yanukovych rejected the EU cooperation agreement. A week before, all of a sudden, I don't know, were they stumbling through a KGB archive and found it laying on the floor? Or did President Yanukovych send David Rising a copy personally? I don't know. You ask the question. How does the Associated Press get their hands on a KGB file from 1968 that has a dead man pointing a finger at my father when just 5 months earlier, and after an extensive investigation accusing him of being a war criminal, they say there's nothing that shows he had a hand in war crimes? It's your job. You ask them where they got it, how they got it, and why they think it's legitimate. I think the KGB might have manufactured it. I think the KGB might have tortured it. I think the guy admitted to being a war criminal and told them whatever they wanted to hear. Suffice it to say that the trial that took place in Poland in 1972 never mentioned my father. It was all Soviet witnesses. There were other people from the Ukrainian Legion of Self-Defense. If you had an investigative file pointing at my father in 1968, why wasn't it brought out in the trial in 1972?
Still in Woolenhouse with Pair 11.
Yes, still.
Were you surprised about the warranted position by the Polish government? I mean, that it got to this point?
Well, it's inconceivable. It was inconceivable when AP originally slandered and defamed my father. It's reached the heights of I don't know, Kafka-esque horror. This is Dreyfus to power of 100. How can you do something like this 75 years after the fact? For those of you that are local, I think about a year and a half ago, there was a Bosnian man that was a taxi driver or something like that, and they were going to try him for crimes during the Bosnian-Serbian War. And I remember a front page story on the local newspaper saying, you know, it's going to be very difficult to try this guy because witnesses and events occurred 25 years ago. How is it possible that after 75 years of nothing, you've decided you finally found conclusive proof of guilt? It's insane, it's incomprehensible, and that is why we're holding today's press conference. Enough is enough.
My question is, what's the next step for your dad? Are you coming forward your dad? Are you fighting you?
You heard us today appeal to the governments of Poland, United States, and the Ukrainian governments to quash this. I hope that in Poland, because this is on the basis of activities of one judge, the Institute of Polish Remembrance 4 years ago was the source of many documents cited by AP. They didn't have anything 4 years ago. Now 4 years later, that same institute convinced a judge to swear out an arrest warrant. Something doesn't add up in that picture, at least to me. It seems fairly clear that the Polish government, or I would hope that somebody in the Polish government would take a sober look at what this represents. A baseless, unsupported vendetta for God only knows what reason, and that no request is made to the United States government. If and when the Polish government decides that they do make a request to the United States government, I expect that evidence or whatever information that they have will be presented to our government, and we will finally have the ability to address and dismiss it in total.
I've got to ask you this. Your dad, why your dad? I mean,
Todd, that's the very question that we asked at our dinner table. Our family gathered around after AP tried to ambush him 4 years ago. Why him? And I'll tell you 3 things. They took 3 separate things. He wrote a book. He went to Ukraine. In 2004, my father went to Ukraine, and he and my mother presented scholarly papers at the Ukrainian University of Ostrov on the Ukrainian struggle for liberation during World War II. He republished his book in Ukraine. I'm absolutely certain that the enemies of Ukraine were at that speech, found that book, and have waited to bring that forward. I leave it to the press to investigate who are these sources, who are these people who brought it forward, and I will help you along that step. There was only one source, only one person that pointed the finger at my father. His name is Dr. Stephen Ankier. He's an amateur Nazi hunter based in England, and he's never, thanks to our local NBC affiliate, who plotted to them, they're the only organization that I know of that has come out publicly and said they checked on this guy, and he's never found a single Nazi. That is the sole source of AP's original attack on my father. When you review the letter I gave them the names, addresses, and heads of the 2 leading research institutes dealing with the questions of these issues in Ukraine. Please ask them, did they go through the diligence of contacting and verifying the information through those sources? I will add finally in closing, Dr. Stephen Ankier said he found my father because his name was registered 90 days before the end of the war with the Waffen-SS Galician Division. I've provided you proof and evidence that in 1987, this Waffen-SS Galician Division, go to Wikipedia, people, it's just not that hard. They were